Lama, thank you so much for your time and for this teaching. As you know from the Facebook or the message I sent you, I was hoping you could offer a teaching on what you know or what you think might be helpful for myself and anyone listening about demons, psychic attacks, and the essence of protection.
Mhm. I think in Buddhism in general, so coming from India into Tibet and continuing through China, Korea, Japan, Mongolia, various countries, there is an idea that sentient life exists simultaneously on many different dimensions or different levels. And we can call some of those levels ghosts, spirits, gods, demons, so on and so forth, whatever kind of name we want to give to them. I think in general, Buddha talks about, Buddha spoke mainly about 6 realms. The sort of Deva realm or heavenly realm, where beings have very long lives and live in luxury, etc. Sort of like Shiva and Parvati and Krishna, Brahma. And these are a kind of spirit, you could say, spirit world, or deity world, or godly realms, or whatever. But there's something which is parallel to our world. So throughout India, for many centuries, people will propitiate Ishvara or Vishnu or Lakshmi in order to get what they call siddhi, a kind of a boon or a blessing. Much in the way that Jews propitiated Jehovah to get assistance in the beginning with Jehovah as a god of war, helping them in their struggles with their enemies, because at that time everyone was a little bit pushy from all sides. And later, I would say, in nation building as the one permitted deity in the country, or one permitted god amongst the nations. Then this continued with Christians, because Christ, of course, was a Jew and inherited that legacy and continued it. I would say modifying it in some way with Buddhist influence from the Spice Road, going from Alexandria in Egypt through Palestine, through Philistine, over through Iran, Persia, and down into India. So difference between Christian and Jewish attitudes on many issues comes down to a smudging of Buddhism from that influence. I mean, I'm personally an adherent of the theory that between ages 12 and 16, when Christ ran into trouble with the high priests because he debated them in the temple and he thought he won. His disciples said he won. But winning an argument against a high priest may not be a good thing.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Right.
So according to that idea, he and his whole family disappear. So the life of Christ goes up to age 12, and nothing more is said until he reappears at age 28, I think it is, or 27. So he's gone for 15 or 16 years. And of course, in the East, there is a belief that he hopped on a caravan going over through Persia, down through the Spice Route, and just spent time first in the Punjab and up in Ladakh, then down in Varanasi, over in Orissa. And at that time, Buddhism was the national religion of all of India. So if we look at Christianity and we look at Buddhism, the main differences between the two are something we can easily say are ideas and practices parallel or strongly advocated in the Buddhist tradition at the time.
Mm.
But anyway, if we look at the first level of spirits, if you would say, they would say the gods, like Jehovah for Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And for Hindus, Brahma, Vishnu, and Ishvara are the three biggies. But in the Hindu world, of course, they talk about, what is it? 6 dimensions of the realm of form, and then the realm of formlessness with 17 dimensions of the realm of formlessness, and I think a further 4 or something, a realm of pure form. No, 6 of the world of sensory experience. In other words, the gods or the spirits experience things much like mammals and lizards and so forth do, by means of sensory experience. And the world of pure form, where it's not really sensory experience, but rather a kind of a full immersion, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the formless realm, which is beyond time, space, and so on, a kind of experience of beyond time, space. So we could say those are a type of being. Now, if we were to irritate them in some way through bad behavior, we can also get curses from them. And it's common in India that you have certain kinds of babas, as they call them, a type of sadhu or monk or shaman, which may feel that you're behaving badly and may do some sort of a ritual or prayer to bring you to your senses. And you may experience it as a psychic attack, but it's just the gods out there trying to straighten you out and get you off your silly behavioral pattern into something more sensible and meaningful. So, you're spending your time, I don't know, at the horse races and gambling casinos, and suddenly it feels like, you're under a psychic attack. All your horses start losing and all your bets start losing. But it's all for the good. And then below that, the Asuras, the sort of fighting gods, you could say, which are very similar to the Titans in the Greek and Roman world, but a lower class of deity, which are always a little on the jumpy side.
Yeah. They're said to have a lot of technology too, right? A lot of power and technology, and they live long.
Well, there's a certain class called Saringila, the long-lived gods. They're in the realm of desire, not in the Titan realm. And they live for hundreds of thousands of years. So sometimes in longevity practices, people do mantras to connect with that realm and bring some of that, what do you call, bending of the time element. If you put your hand in a flame for 3 seconds, it seems like 50 days.
Sure.
But if you're on a desert island with a budget of $1 million a year to spend on whatever pleasure you want, those 50 days are gone in like 5 minutes. So you could say a bending of time, the bending of the time clock. So I think most people in the West, we're more concerned with the sort of lower classes of gods over here because of our own Judeo-Christian background, the fear of demons and devils and all this sort of thing. And also I think a little bit because of the dualistic sense in the Judeo-Christian tradition, also the Muslim tradition, the 3 Semitic religions, as kind of life as a big fight between good and evil. And you're either on one side or the other. Whereas in the Buddhist world, we don't really see it like that.
Mm.
Of course, there's some people out there who we can call them the criminal element. But they're not inherently evil.
Yeah.
They're just, they're mass murderers or whatever. They just got distorted sense of taste of what's a meaningful activity.
Mm.
And as humans, we don't like it when they're out like mass murdering humans, but if they go out mass murdering fish, we don't seem to care that much. If they go out mass murdering prairie dogs or deer or rabbits, we don't seem to care so much.
Mm.
So, if it's really a fight between good and evil, and those people are really evil, it's really hard to say. These are all contextual ideas, or contextual situations, you could say.
Mm.
And with the lower deities, and when we go below that, we speak of the human realm and then the various animal realms, which includes birds and fish and all those kind of visible things. Below that, the ghost realms, preta in Sanskrit, yadak in Tibetan. Yadak in Tibetan means something like tied, minds are bound, or minds are a little bit bound. They're like stubborn types, you could say.
Mm.
Moody and grumpy. The Chinese translated that word with the epistemological meaning of hungry ghost.
Mm.
So sort of wandering spirits. And these are the types that the British find in their castles. So, back in the old days when a castle had a dungeon in the bottom and you picked up your enemy and tortured them there for 3 years before you murdered them, or, women poisoned their husbands so they could have more time with their boyfriends.
Oh.
Men poisoned their wives because, the Pope didn't allow them to divorce. So it was until death do we depart. Do we part. And those kind of people who die with great attachment.
Yeah.
May get stuck. And then if we're wandering around, they may try and chit chat with us. And unless we're an open-minded person, you could call someone scared of ghosts to be a kind of a racist, right? It's a kind of a racist syndrome, being afraid of ghosts. It's like being afraid around white people or around black people or Chinese people or Japanese people. It's a kind of a speciesist racism.
Wow. I love that view. That's a great thought.
When Lama Yeshe was, Tubin Yeshe, who founded the FPMT group of organizations back in the 1970s, when his students started looking for Dharma centers in the West, Lama told them, well, I heard that over there you can buy these old haunted houses very cheaply because British people are afraid of ghosts. But we Tibetans, we love ghosts. So let's get those.
Wow. Wow.
Because a ghost is like, I see you've got a pet dog running around there.
Yeah, a couple of them, yeah.
A pet dog, but you don't have to like take them for walks and, scoop the poop and stuff like this. Feeding them is not such a problem. You put up a little biscuit and say a mantra once a day, that sort of stuff. And no kitty litter, like with cats stinking up your house and all that. They're kind of nice fellows to have around. You just have to let them know you like them and respect them, and that they're going to live 100,000 years. You're only going to live like 80 or 100. And please don't mind that you're sharing their space.
Wow.
But people sometimes who are sensitive and nervous might feel intimidated by such energies. And below that, the hell beings, and beings kind of on the borderlands of hell. So, how many did I talk about? They like 8 hot hells, 8 cold hells, then the occasional hells and the surrounding hells. So the occasional hells are, sometimes the being is like in a hell-like state, and sometimes things are like normal. They kind of overlap with our world. So we may have some of those very disturbed beings sort of spilling out from the hell realms from time to time. So of course, the timid types and racist will be very nervous. It's like, hey, I'm a human. Only humans, cats, dogs, birds.
Mm.
No ants, no insects, no
Mm.
no termites,
Mm. Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no rodents,
yeah,
no ghosts,
yeah.
no demons.
I'm gonna get, yeah.
We like sort of cherry pick
Wow.
on our roommates, you could say.
Wow.
But in the Buddhist world, we don't worry much about that. And we think they're all living beings like ourselves. And like ourselves, they like to be happy and they don't like to be fearful and they don't like to be in states of suffering. And so Buddha taught a simple little prayer. In Pali, it's known as the Metta Sutta.
Mm.
And my Buddhist name is Maitri. So in Sanskrit, it's the Maitri Sutta, the Sutra of Love. So Metta, you know, the Pali people could never quite get their R's correct. They're like Chinese. When they say R, they go R like that. Or the British, when they're saying R, they'll say, "Oh, you okay today? Oh, you feeling?" They won't say, "Are you okay?" They say, "Oh, you feeling okay today?"
Mm. Uh.
Japanese and Koreans also struggle with the R.
Uh.
But anyway, this kind of feeling of multidimensionality is very much in there in the Buddhist tradition
Mm.
from the get-go, you could
Mm.
say.
Yeah.
So traditionally, whenever a Buddhist in a traditional country buys a house or moves into a new house, even before that, if they're building on a house, they'll call other shamans or Buddhist monks who are well schooled in the spiritual arts to come. So for instance, your tree might have a tree spirit in it. The rocks and the pools, the streams may have rock spirits, tree spirits, and so forth. And those beings have been there for long before you got there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just come in and destroy their whole habitat, that energy can be like have the effect of a psychic attack on them.
Ooh.
And naturally, they jump back a little bit. So we can say these various dimensions of being between nature spirits, godly spirits, ghostly spirits, and demonic spirits, or denizen spirits, perhaps is better than demonic, the spillovers from the hell realms, the spillovers from the ghost realms, and so on, disturbed spirits. For instance, with the tree situation, any Buddhist cutting down a tree will do at least a 1-hour ceremony speaking to the spirit of the tree.
Oh.
Probably making a little effigy, inviting the spirit to come into it and say, let's find another new tree. I must apologize, but this one has to go. It's got termites and it's too close to my house. And if a wind comes down, it may fall on my house and kill someone. So you'll apologize profusely and do a ritual. And then you'll check on the ritual to see if you actually managed to coax him out. And then you'll put him in a little paper boat or a little plastic, some kind of little floating device, and put him in a nearby stream. And as he floats off, you'll sing a song. Now keep your eye out. There's lots of beautiful trees down there. As soon as you see one, hop back in. You'll be happy as can be.
Wow. Is it a mantra for this? Because Glenn, as you know, like I've built and designed, you may not know, I've built and designed gardens for 20 years and I've been a part of.
Yeah, there's a particular, they call it in Tibetan, lutrub, a kind of Naga ritual, the kind of spirit that lives in trees and rocks, gardens, little mountains, bushes. It's a kind of a Naga spirit. And say, for instance, at one time, one of my best friends before I went to India, for the 6 months before I went to India, I was living in Europe. One of my best friends was a Frenchman who was the son of a count, so a very high aristocratic family. And his father was a general in the army, but also a doctor, a medical doctor. And from about age 10, he had just had boils after boils after boils. And sometimes as many as 20 or 30 at one time. And father, being a doctor and a general, being a general was very bossy and stubborn, and being a doctor, determined to approach it like a general and attack it until the thing was destroyed.
Wow.
And invested all of his medical knowledge and access to medical resources to eliminate this condition. But it never did. About once every 6 months, he would have a boil attack, and just dozens would come back at one time, like sticking out of his head hair and cheekbone hair and chin hair.
Glenn, you froze up a little bit.
Well,
Still have a very bad connection right now. Glenn,
yeah,
are you back?
yeah.
Okay, I'm still here with you also. I lost you there for a minute. All I heard were about the boils.
Well, how's that?
Good, good.
My microphone isn't working, so I have to unplug it. Sound won't be quite good.
I can hear you if you can hear me.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, start the story of my friend again.
Yeah. Boils
We have
all
a
over.
strong rain today, so the internet might be a little slower. And so anyway, yes, because his father was a general and a doctor, had gone about attacking this boil situation for many years. When I knew him in Europe, he didn't have that. I didn't know him in the period when he was having an attack. Then when I had been to Darmstadt for a couple of years, he came to visit, and at that time he was having a boil attack, and I would say 50 huge boils, like quarter to a half size of an egg, each one of them all over his back, shoulders, neck,
Wow.
face, head. And so I said, well, we'll go to see the Lama from whom I like to get divinations. And so the Lama did divinations, and he said, yeah, when you were about 10 years old, your family built a house in the countryside, and you cut down an old tree that had been sacred to the old peoples, the old religion people of the south of France. And there was a Naga spirit living in it, and it hopped out and hopped into your body, and it's been living in your body ever since then.
Mm.
And so you can use whatever medicines you like, but it'll always just be there. All that'll do is get rid of the boils, not the cause of the boils.
Mm.
So what you have to do is a ritual called lukuk, which means capturing the Naga.
Mm.
Now, to do that ritual, you have to be a vegetarian.
Mm.
So every Tibetan monastery keeps one monk on rotation as a vegetarian.
Interesting. Is that right?
It's kind of like a punishment duty, you could say.
Wow.
Yeah, so they keep one because you have to be vegetarian to do that ritual, to do the Naga rituals. And so a very old monk from Nechung Monastery, that's the state oracle monastery, we invited him to come and do it. And he came in the morning at maybe 7 o'clock. And then he made an effigy out of barley flour, roasted barley flour, and made little lakes with milk and put like little twigs in it for flowers and bigger twigs for trees. And then he starts strumming and singing a Naga song. And the Naga song, basically in this case, Naga resident in a human body, just goes on like, oh, you're there in the human body, and it's You know, you get all that blood and pus and shit and piss and lymph and snot and tears and earwax.
Yeah.
What in Tibetan medicine are called 36 uh, unclean substances of the human body. You know, if you're a monk or a nun and you start feeling lusty toward the opposite sex, then how do you cut your lust? Because, you know, they have vows of celibacy. You think, oh, yes, don't think about the pretty face, the boobs, or the hips. Think about the poo-poo, the pee-pee, the nose, the tears in the eyes, the earwax.
That could produce some awful side effects, like becoming erotic, you know, turned on by awful things.
Yeah, it couldn't work for perverts. For perverts, you'd have to say something like, now imagine that she's just taken a bath inside and out and it's completely clean.
Oh my God. Maybe just let these people have sex. maybe that's easier.
Anyway, there's this list of 36. And so the text, you know, sort of does in very beautiful voice. Now, you know, you used to live in this beautiful tree, and it was a beautiful tree with leaves and sweet smelling flowers and berries and wonderful winds passing through and breezes and sunshine and beautiful soft rain and all of this. And now you're in this dirty body, you know, sharing space with shit and piss and blah, 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 for the list of 36. Now, why don't you look over here at this beautiful little garden we've made for you. Notice the beautiful trees and the lakes of milk and the beautiful flowers. And then ring the bell and do a sort of mantra. And eventually you'll hope the naga is going to hop out of the body and into the either the lake or the little twigs in the effigy garden. So this went on for maybe 4 or 5 hours. And it goes as a cycle. And after each cycle, the Lama does a divination to see if it was successful or not. And so maybe 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon, he sort of looked up and said, "Got it. Huh? Top songs, top songs." He looked very excited. He was about 80 years old, real old, one of those old monks, real sweet guy. Before that, after every cycle, when he did the divination, he'd go, difficult, kaput. So at about 4:30, he sort of looks up and says, "Got it." And then below my house, maybe 1/4 of a mile, there was a little stream. So we take this in a tray and we all walk down to the little stream and sit down. And then he does about another half hour of goodbyes to the little spirit that's now in the little tray, and saying, "Yeah, now we're going to put you on the river, and please be happy with that, and keep your eye out for a nice tree or rock or something to hop back into." And so the little boat floated away. We went back to the house. And I would say an hour later, one by one, all 50 of his boils started popping. And big ones, like up here and up here and here and here and neck and shoulders and back. Basically, and when a boil pops, a large boil, there's a lot of pus in them. So each one just releases like 5-6 tablespoons, I suppose, of pus. And so this poor guy, he just basically, once it started coming, had to just hop back in the shower every 5 minutes, because he was just, like in the Ghostbuster movies when they get, what's it called? Goobed,
yeah.
Goobed with green stuff.
Slimed,
yeah, get slimed. He slimed me. Well, the stuff just kept coming out and coming out and coming out. I would say 4 or 5 hours, every 10 minutes, he had to take a quick shower just to rinse off all the slime.
Mm.
And by the end of the evening, I mean, every boil on his body was like a pouch just hanging down, sort of like a little tobacco pouch when it's empty and it just hangs down, or a small balloon, the air's gone out, and the thing just, because the skin had been stretched by that
Yeah.
boil. You
Yeah.
have that stretching effect. And so he really just looked like he'd come out of a sort of a boxing match with Muhammad Ali or something like that, and didn't do so well in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he went to bed and, slept very well that night. And the next day, the skin started shrinking and all of that and going back into place. And within 4 to 5 days, he looked completely perfect.
Wow. Wow.
So we can say that was psychosomatic, or it was a placebo effect by
Yeah.
being around and thinking something was going to happen. It made his body trigger something into happening.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? It worked.
But the reality is it worked.
Yeah.
And I translated, because one of my lamas was a ngakpa, a tantric shaman kind of lama, a ritualist lama, doing exorcisms and sort of things with gods, ghosts, goblins, goops.
Was that Ling Rinpoche?
No. Ngakpa Yeshe Dorje, a long-haired lama with, no, Ling Rinpoche, he was sort of like a great master lama teacher. And the shaman types are usually not those kind of master teacher lamas. They're more. And so, whenever anyone gets a new house, moves into, prepares for, they'll come on and do a kind of a Naga ritual.
Mm.
In fact, the Dhamma Lobcha Rinpoche, when Tibet House built Buddha Garden in New Delhi, the Indian government flew down Ling Rinpoche's greatest disciple, Dhamma Lobcha Rinpoche, and had him do a 3-day clearing of the land of the Buddha Jayanti Park in Delhi.
Mm.
They set it exactly according to astrology and the side of the sun and all this to find the perfect moment to do the first cut of the earth.
Mm.
And if someone moves into a new apartment, they'll often have something done. And sometimes this works to one's advantage. For instance, in Europe, when Europeans afraid to live in haunted houses, but the house would sell for 10% of its real value.
Yeah.
I mean, people just get tired of hearing rattling chains and not being able to find where you put your shaving cream and stuff like that. The poltergeists, the mischievous ones, are the irritating ones more than the malicious ones.
Mm.
They're always hiding things from you and teasing you, and they're just trying to have some fun, right?
Mm.
But if you bribe them with cookies and a candle and a stick of incense, they'll let you alone and be nice.
Ah.
So Buddha wrote a simple poem called the Metta Sutta. Whenever monks were traveling, if they're sleeping somewhere in a new place, and often in those days, travelers would just sleep under a tree. Often local villagers would put up a kind of a gazebo style thing
Mm-hmm.
Near a tree. And, traveling monks, pilgrims could sleep in those.
Mm.
And so he gave a sutra called the Metta Sutra in Pali, Maitri Sutra in Sanskrit. And he said, if you are traveling and you're staying in one of those, and there's some rumor of ghostly and demonic activity, just chant that before you lie down at night. And it just goes on about how all living beings are our mother in some lifetime. So you, Mr. Ghost or Mrs. Ghost, some previous life, you were my mom. Or you ended up in such a screwed up situation right now, but these things happen.
Oh, no.
Whenever we talk about hell beings, we always think it's someone else's relatives.
Yeah. 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 I wish I found that as funny. It's quite alarming, really.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at my own past, I mean, a lot being Irish on my dad's side, it meant a lot of the Irish after the British occupation of Ireland. Anyone who became wealthy and successful usually got jobs as captains or lieutenants or whatever in the British Navy, because that was Britain's expansionist time, and those were the jobs that offered the greatest promise of benefit.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you come back with great caches of furs or gold or pirates. You know, because actually the word privateer comes from when Elizabeth gave licenses to these guys to go out robbing and sinking Spanish galleons carrying gold back to it from Spain to from South America to Spain. And you get a license from the Queen to sink those ships and steal their gold. Just had to pay, like, I don't know what the split was, 50-50, something
80-20.
Like
yeah, probably.
yeah. So Walter Raleigh and Francis Drake, that's how they made all their money. And that's why they became Sir this and Sir that, because they brought so much money. And of course, they killed a lot of people doing that.
Yep.
So there's a good chance that they didn't go up after they died.
Yeah.
It was on my own Irish ancestors. The one who was given land in Canada was a captain of a boat for many years in the British service. And so therefore, as a reward, when he retired, was given a big chunk of land in Canada. And, you know, I don't know exactly what he did as captain of that boat, but I can imagine there was a bit of mischief in there.
Yeah, for sure. What nationality is your mother?
My mother was British war bride.
British war bride.
Her father's lineage was in the Napoleonic Wars. They had received a minor title for killing a lot of Frenchmen during the fighting Bonnie.
Wow.
Napoleon Bonaparte. And there were a lot of those kind of nouveau aristocrats. They didn't get land, or they didn't get an income, and they didn't get a serious title, but they got the right to put one of their children in officer schools. So basically the British Army, to be an officer, you had to have some perk like that in olden days.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so officers were always from aristocratic families or manufactured aristocratic families like Sir Walter Raleigh or Sir Francis Drake, pirates who gave a lot of money.
Yeah.
And how the Brits have fallen now, like Van Morrison got knighted, and Paul McCartney, and even Mick Jagger.
Yeah. Well, they're pirates, kind of. They're pirates of creative, creative energies.
But anyway, in this prayer written by the Buddha, or spoken by the Buddha, taught by the Buddha, it just sort of mentions how all beings are our mothers in a previous life, and we should have love for all living beings, regardless of what they are, because we're interconnected to all of them.
Yeah. And
so then it's like, you know, singing a nursery rhyme to your kid late at night. The kid will go to sleep and have a nice sleep.
Yeah.
Rather than you go to sleep and start snoring and it gets pissed off that you're like sleeping next to its tree and disturbing its sleep. So that's probably the simplest kind of such ritual. Otherwise, there's all kinds of what in Tibetan are called shidak torma, offering to the local lords. Shidak means local lord. And so that means some kind of mountain spirit, earth spirit. Sometimes they're called sadak, earth lords, shidak, territory lords, yuldak, area lord. So for instance, in Mongolia, when you travel across the country, when you go from one valley to the next, you cross a ridge, and there's always a rock offering, a big, like a stupa made of rocks kind of thing. And usually with a stick out coming out of the top and some blue scarves tied to it. And everyone goes through, stops, and offers a little rock. And this little rock is thanking the Yulda, the territory lord of the valley you're leaving, for his hospitality and requesting paying tithe to the Lord of the valley you're coming to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, it's kind of, I like it as a metaphor, at least. It's kind of a beautiful poetry.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's more than that.
Mm-hmm.
In the West, in the last couple of hundred years in the West, we've become very physical and not much metaphysics.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my best friends here where I am right now, I'm in the town where I went to high school. And after graduation, he went on to become one of Canada's best nuclear physicists.
Mm.
And I went on to become probably one of Canada's 2 or 3 best Tibet men.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And when I saw him last time, whenever I come back, I always phone him, and we always get together and laugh and chat a lot and stuff. But he says, Glenn, I really think physics really is the answer to everything, and I'm really, nothing else is really worth anything. I said, I got to tell you, Alex, physics is really just kids playing Legos with the universe, just moving physical matter around. It has nothing to do with a deeper level of reality.
Mm.
I mean, I went to engineering schools after
Mm-hmm.
graduation, so I respect physical material, and I liked playing Legos when I was a young man.
Mm.
But physics, chemistry, biology, it's just pushing, it's like Legos pushing around little bits and pieces of the material world.
Mm.
And it doesn't really look beyond that. It doesn't concern itself with anything beyond that. So from my side, what is beyond that may be metaphorical, maybe poetic reference, maybe romantic ideal.
Mm.
But whatever it is, it has its own power, its own beauty, its own energy to it.
Mm.
In terms of exorcisms, I've seen many, I learned to do some exorcisms when I was in Dharamsala during my 12 or 15 years of training. I say 12 because it was 12 years continually, and then it was another 6 or 7 years for, roughly 6 months a year.
Mm.
So the better part of 20 years, but anyway. I studied some exorcism rituals and what they say and how they work and that sort of stuff. And they are very beautiful.
Mm.
And when I participated in them being done by master exorcists, I often noticed really wonderful results from them.
Mm-hmm.
So we can say it's purely psychological, the effect, the positive effect that having something done has on a person, confidence or something like that. But it might be more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So to go beyond how to deal with those energies, my own opinion is that fear is always a problem. We see even with dogs, if you're relaxed around the dog is very
Yeah.
relaxed.
Yeah.
You're fearful around the dog, it really gets really suspicious and really
Yes.
gets fascinated by why you're scared of it. And then it thinks, well, it's like if a police start talking to someone and they look nervous, the police start thinking this guy's guilty of something. I don't know what it is, but he just looks guilty.
Wow. Yeah.
So I think fear is a big problem.
Wow.
And so there are a lot of different practices for getting beyond fear. For instance, in Vajrayogini practice, we do something called the Kusali offering, where we visualize ourself in our ordinary body, and at our heart we put Vajrayogini, the female Buddha, and we look up and we see a tunnel going out the top of our head, and we shoot out of it and go in front of our body. And we looked one way and we see our route to Lama, and the lineage Lamas going back to the time of the Buddha. We sort of give the root Lama a little hug or a kiss on the cheek as Vajrayogini. And then we turn and look at our body, And Vajrayogini holds a skull cup in this hand, and a skull cup in this hand, and a curved knife in this hand, and she's dancing. And she goes over to our old body and she cuts off the head right here and takes it like this and starts dancing with it and singing a Vajra song. And then she chops up the whole body into little pieces and throws it into the skull cup. And then saying mantras, the skull cup boils and ferments, and we go Oma Hung. And the Hung transforms the color, taste, and smell, so the pee-pee and poo-poo become like nectar from the heavens. Ah transforms it into wisdom nectar. Om causes it to become an infinite ocean of healing nectars. And then we scatter it. And so this is a very popular practice in Tibetan Buddhism known as Chud or Sarchud. You may have heard of it. There's several books on it. And so that Kusali offering coming from the Dakini Tantras was kind of expanded by a Tibetan female yogini, Machik Labdhan. Basically, I would say early 11th century, living in 11th century, early 1100s rather. And made it into a whole practice where you do this kind of practice, chop up your body, and first you offer it to all the enlightened beings, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and so forth, Yidams. And that includes your gurus and the enlightened masters. Then you offer it to the gods, and it goes as nectar and so forth. And then you offer it to the titans, and it goes as kind of pacifying nectars that reduce their anger and their desire for conflict. Then you offer it to all humans, sprinkle it through the human realm, and all the humans become less. Our biggest fault is our narcissism. I heard even in America, even your president, who should be humble, is slightly narcissistic. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
I don't know either.
So then we spread the nectar throughout the human realm to sort of heal humans of their narcissism. And then in the animal realms, the problem with the animals is their biggest problem is cruise control living. In other words, living on instinct and not thinking things through carefully enough. So they can basically instinct can get them trapped by others and eaten alive and all of that. And then the ghost realms, tossing to the ghosts, and ghosts suffer from fear and displacement and sort of bondage, hunger, thirst, cold, and so on. And this reduces their fear and reduces their lamentation and makes them feel more peaceful and relaxed. Then we scatter it through the various hell realms, and in the hot hells it falls like cooling rain, and in the cold hells like warming sunlight. So again, we can say this is just a symbolic gesture, but the reality is we're kind of projecting good energy into all the realms. And traditionally, when you did this, when you received this initiation in Tibet, you would receive it in a charnel ground. You go to a place where bodies were left to be fed to the animals. So often in India, to a charnel ground. In India, it was very common, the 8 great dutra, they're known as in Tibetan charnel grounds, but they didn't bury them. It was very popular. You would eat in food all your life. So at the time of your death, the best way to dispose of the body was to lay it on the outskirts of the jungle and let the jackals and the lions and the tigers and the vultures feast on it as a kind of a final offering of goodness. And the belief is that the kind of attitude was, well, some of those people watching their body being eaten like that may have difficulty leaving. So probably one of those places, well, you're putting 10, 20 bodies a day. day in, day out, year in, year out, century in, you're bound to have a few
Yeah.
disgruntled clients. So it was very common to go and do this practice in that charnel ground.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Even receiving the initiation, you'd go and receive it at midnight while wild tigers and jackals and whatnot were out there noshing on the bodies.
Mm.
You know, it's very common to receive it at midnight. That was considered the best way to receive it.
Mm.
Now, fear has a number of beneficial effects if we can use it. First, it forces us to examine who is afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Am I afraid? You know, someone like, if you think you're going to be hit by a passing truck, you're afraid for your body. You know, if someone insults you and calls you, you know, you're a quack. If you're a doctor and they call you a quack, it's something about your mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're a banker and they call you a lawyer and they call you a shyster.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So fear makes a very strong sense of self and makes us kind of examine what is that self that we're fearing for, and where in the body and mind is it, and so on and so forth. So give the initiation like that. Using fear to examine the nature of self is considered important. And then for the practice, to go and do the practice in the charnel grounds, to meditate there and do the visualization of your body being already dead and that you're basically transforming it into nectar.
Mm.
And then visualizing that there's hundreds of dissatisfied clients from the past centuries,
Mm-hmm.
sort of milling around, all unhappy. And you throw some of your body transformed into nectar to them, and they consume it. And consuming it is like a great healing balm, healing ointment, and they're able to release their fear and their craving and their clinging.
Mm.
So Sultra Malioni is an Italian woman, lives in New Mexico. She teaches this practice a lot to her various students. And she's written a book called Feed Your Demons. Of course, if we read it in a traditional way, it's written in a kind of a very concrete linguistical structure. She perhaps gives a little bit more of a symbolic and poetic interpretation. And that's perhaps important for modern readers. We tend to be non-literalists in these things. If we say ghost, we're not quite sure what a ghost is. Where Casper, as kids, we watch Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Right. Yeah.
But then there were those like ghost movies, which were very scary.
Yeah.
Very un-Casper-like.
Yeah.
So those kind of practices are there. And finally, when we do Yidam practice, if we have fully qualified tantric initiation and we do Yidam practice, then when we transform into the Yidam, we look out into the world and we try to see all living beings as Buddha emanations of enlightened beings manifesting in those various forms. But sometimes due to tantric theater, just due to theater of enlightenment, the manifestations of the way things are manifesting will need some minor tailoring or adjustments.
Mm.
And that comes to the four faces of compassion, the Trinle Shi in Tibetan is called the four Buddha actions, Buddha karmas, or four, sometimes people translate as enlightenment activities. Pacification, increasing, subduing, or destroying. So then tantric rituals are of one of those four kinds. If someone has a lot of, you or someone else has a lot of problems in their life and those problems can be pacified, that's easy.
Mm.
And so that's associated with the eastern direction and so on, and the color white. And people do fire rituals for that and various other kinds of rituals. And then increase the color yellow, gold, like the earth, and it increases all good qualities. So certain kind of rituals, say for ghosts, demons, spooks, scaries, whatever you want to call them, to increase their good qualities. Sometimes just pacifying their disturbing elements won't be enough. Try to increase their good qualities. Well, now listen, Casper. Yeah, I know you're appearing like I don't remember Casper's friends, but some of them were kind of scary types.
I don't think I ever saw the show.
You probably remember all those ones, but I don't. You see, you're a young guy, so you read those ones recently. I haven't read those in 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, some of them are kind of tough types. Okay, Bruto or something like that. I know, but please remember, you were my mom in a previous life, and you were not always in this disturbed state. And calm down and just think of some good qualities. And oh, yeah, there I feel that does not feel good. So that's called compassion as increasing or enriching. And subduing, then you'll do the ritual as a kind of overcoming that deity, overcoming that spirit, and maybe pledging him or her to a kind of bondage, you could say. It's like if you got a mad dog and you know the madness will pass in a week or two, you tie him up rather than, let him run around biting everyone. So for instance, in Darmslow once, there's this guy whose wife was having an affair with one of the other aristocratic government workers. And the husband got very upset and committed suicide. And for the next 2 weeks, all night, the wind in Ganki, near where he committed suicide, was always whistling, and trees were moaning, and everyone was having bad dreams.
Wow.
And then they asked various local lamas to do some pacification and increased ritual. But to do subduing or violence, killing, destroying, you have to have finished the 3-year retreat. And to do those rituals, they didn't want to ask Ling Rinpoche or Trijan Rinpoche, because that's sort of third Dalai Lama's gurus, and so it's kind of below their dignity, you could say. That's below their pay grade.
Yeah.
But at that time, another one of my gurus, Tara Rinpoche, was head of the Tantric monastery up east of Bhutan. And so they sent over for him, because even though he's pretty well an equally high Lama, as head of the Tantric monastery, then he has some kind of responsibility for that. So he came, and he brought a little black cast iron box with him. And his cast iron mystical dagger. And they made a kind of spirit trap catcher, you could say. And then they did the Lama dances and other things associated with catching the attention of this being. And then calling it into the dew and getting it into the little cast iron box. And then putting it in there with some sacred substances. And so then it wouldn't be able to get through the cast iron. In ancient times, cast iron was considered a kind of a sacred substance.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so in most exorcisms I've seen, they use a cast iron cauldron. And the exorcist will put a string from his heart to the spirit trap to the cauldron. And they bring the spirit into the spirit trap and transfer it into the effigy and put the effigy into the cauldron. And then in the cauldron, then it can't penetrate. There's some quality of iron which the vibration, because in Buddhism, everything, all physical material is just energy. It's just, you could say E equals MC squared.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything is just Shinto Trome Lung in Tibetan, and a very subtle wind or very subtle energy.
Mm.
So iron is one of those types which can be used in these kind of cases. And the best kind of iron is namchak, meteorite metal, iron from meteorite metals. So the master exorcists often have a vajra made of this, and a bell made of this, and a purpa, a mystical dagger made of this, and little pots and pans made of this for ritual purposes and so on. So anyway, yes, he, after 3 days, managed to get the little fellow calmed down about his wife having an affair. And if you go into death from a very disturbed state of life like that, it's often difficult to transition successfully. So popped him in a little box and then took him to a sacred tree and buried under the sacred tree, and then left a little mantra with a time mechanism on it so that within the little box, everything would seem like a paradise or a beautiful pure land with all kinds of good qualities. No reminders of his errant wife. And then he would stay there until he calmed down, and then slip out of that and transition through the bardo in the next life when he could have his next learning lesson.
Wow.
So those, and then so like that, and then if none of that is considered safe enough because the spirit is too difficult to subdue, then there is a demon killing ritual. But it's kind of beautiful. I've participated in some of those. And when you do, you make the effigy, but then you use a stupa and you put the effigy at the bottom of the stupa. And then you call to the spirit when it's in there. And you say, now, as you rise through the various levels of the stupa, you're going to go through the earth element and Buddha Akshobhya realm, and you're going to release all your anger, and it's going to be transformed into mirror-like wisdom. You're going to go through the next dimension of Buddha Ratna Sambhava. You're going to release all of your narcissism and miserliness and greed, and just sort of slip into the wisdom of the equal preciousness of all things and all beings. And next you're going to come through the realm of Amitabha, Buddha of boundless light, and you're going to release all of your addictions and attachments and obsessive compulsive disorders and slip into the realm of infinite radiance that discerns reality as it is. And then you're going to come into the realm of Buddha Amoga Siddhi. So each step of the stupa comes up, it kind of releases a klesha, a negative mind state, and a whole sense of self connected to that, and a whole sense of behavior connected to that, whole sense of attachments and obsessive compulsivenesses attached to that. In Moga City, you're going to release all of your envies and jealousies and all of this kind of thing, all of your hurt and feelings of low self-worth, and you're going to slip into the realm of purely spontaneous, joyful activity. And finally, out the top, you're going to slip into the realm of Dharma Dhatu.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. So, but to do that one, you're supposed to complete the 3-year retreat, because otherwise, when you call it out and you're doing that, if you don't get it right, it can get away. Who knows? It might even be pissed off at you for fiddling around.
Yeah. For doing a bad job.
Definitely become part of its life at that point. So I think we can stop there for today, unless you have 1 or 2 more questions. We can have another 5 or 10 minutes if that's useful, or we can just stop there.
I'll leave it in your hands. If you feel inspired to share any more, I'm really appreciating this time.
Well, I think if I were to share something more, would be to say that whenever one feels one is having some sort of psychic attack, to try to remember that painting of the Buddha, which is like flower power. Don't know if you remember that painting.
No.
But in it, Buddha is seen seating in meditation, and surrounding him are many demons attacking him, various 4 kinds of maras, and every kind of weapon throwing at him, and arrows and axes and all of these. And each one he just turns into a flower. I'll see if I can find that and pop it up on my screen. I might be able to do that. I'm not sure. Can I find it without losing you? I may find it. You're still there. Can you still see me?
I can, yes.
Okay, I'll go up on this other screen and I'll go here and I'll go settings, virtual background. And then I'll go, have to put on my glasses to see this because it's just a little thumbnail.
I've seen this, yeah. I didn't realize that's what this was.
Right, so this is like Buddha being attacked by the 4 kinds of demons, demonic forces, or maras. And I think in Buddhism we say the two things you can do in response. One is from the conventional bodhicitta, which was what Buddha suggested by reading the Metta Sutra. Just remembering all beings were my mom and dad, brother, sister in previous lives, and they may be a little bit obnoxious in this present time and be attacking me for whatever reason. Sorry about that. And hey guys, I'm sending you back love and compassion. So meditation on love, meditation on compassion, meditating on bodhicitta. And then there's the ultimate bodhicitta, which is wisdom of emptiness. Who is the I to be attacked? Who is the you to be doing attacking? If you remove the I, the attackee, and you, the attacker, in my mind from that equation, then the idea of an attack becomes impossible. It takes an attacker and an attackee. It takes 2 to tango. And the tango being the two doing it, and the tango being the thing being done. So in Lojong it says, meditate on emptiness. Emptiness is the best protector. But otherwise, if you think you have a powerful tree spirit on your property, and many people do, they have very strong feelings about their trees and nature spirits and so on. Even though the witch hunts in Europe and the Catholics tried to hammer that out of everyone and calling it work of the devil and stuff like that, it's part of our ancient European tradition, part of the ancient Celtic tradition, certainly, and many other ancient traditions, certainly the Indo-European tradition. Almost every one of those traditions has some kind of legacy in that. And but the Catholics tried to hammer it out of consciousness, and everything's either Christ or the devil.
Yeah, it's real simple. Yeah.
And it's I'm sure Christ wouldn't approve, because he was a kind of a relaxed, chilled kind of character. He was very sort of easygoing. And so if you have a tree that you think is a sacred tree, put out little offerings of a muffin to it from time to time, or just a little bit of incense. I mean, of course, be careful that it doesn't draw the kind of rodents which are going to damage your garden or whatever.
Yeah.
For instance, in Bali, every house has a little, looks like a birdhouse in the backyard, but it's a spirit house. I don't know if you've ever seen them.
No, I have not.
They're very, very cute. It's kind of a, when the Muslims took over Indonesia, the Indonesian islands, many of the Buddhists and Hindus ran to Bali, and that's where most of them survived. And so as a result, even today, the majority of the islanders are either Buddhist Hindu or have strong roots in the Indian tradition. So every house in Bali has a little spirit house in the backyard, and it looks a little bit like a combination of a birdhouse side pagoda.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, and they put it up there, and every evening they put a little light in it or a candle for a few minutes, and they often put a little food offering. And of course, the birds come and eat the food, or the squirrels or whatever, and that's okay. That's up to them. But they always put something out there. Otherwise, what I like, the way the Mongolians do it, in the morning, they walk out first with milk, and they throw a little bit of milk in the 4 directions. And they think all of the female nature spirits in those 4 directions, I offer this milk to you as a kind of as a symbol of my respect and honoring the environment and your land, your territory. And they come out secondly with a little bit of vodka.
Nice for the guys.
The female nature spirits like milk, but the male nature spirits like vodka. And so then they throw a little bit of vodka in each of the 4 directions, and saying some kind of little offering like that. And in the Buddhist world, when we do Lama Chopa Sog, twice a month we do a ritual, which is it's called the Tantric Feast. And at the end of the feast, first we offer to the root and lineage gurus. Then we offer to our yidams, our mandala practice Buddhas. Then we offer to Buddha Dharma Sangha. Then we offer to Dhaka Dakini. Then we offer to the sort of enlightened Dharmapalas, protector deities, and then the worldly Dharmapalas. And then all sentient beings. And then lastly, we offer to all of the kind of worldly spirits, like low-level spirits, the hungry ghosts and all that kind of thing. And I think it's my idea with psychic attacks. We could say it's purely psychological. It's a kind of environmental disharmony. But when in the mid-1980s, I was asked to bring Lama tours over and set them up and bring Lamas touring through 50 or 100 cities. And the Lama who requested me to do that was one of my gurus, Khyentse Ishitup from Losaling Monastery. They said, Glenn, these days there's a big problem around the world as people are all out of balance with the nature spirits, the Nagas, the Lu. And if you're out of balance with the nature spirits, you don't sleep well at night. And if you don't sleep well at night, you wake up in the morning with a bad mood. And all day you go around in this bad mood, creating problems for yourself and others.
Wow.
So I think you should organize a Lama tour that would visit, 50 or however many cities. And each of those cities, the Lamas will do these nature spirit rituals to apologize to all of the Nagas of the trees and the mountains and the rivers, and that we humans are behaving badly, and ask them to be a little bit patient with us. It's just a phase we're going through. And he was one of the greatest Lama scholars. So it wasn't like he was like some uneducated provincial sort of shaman hack or something like that. I mean, he was a very, very great Lama scholar, not just a kind of a superstitious country bumpkin kind of monk. And there's lots of superstitious country bumpkin, uneducated monks and whatnot, Lamas, but he was like one of the top echelon of the brightest of the bright. And when I went through the 6 yogas in Neguma with him, it was very amazing because we just read through these. And the 6 yogas of Naguma is like 6 yogas of Naropa, but it's very, very intensely precise sort of meditation material. But he never even once had to pause with any issue in that whole tradition. So like that. And so then going around for, who knows, maybe we're the ones that toppled the Reagan Bush governments.
Did they get toppled?
Because our first tour was 86, our second tour was 87, and our third tour was 88, 89, and our last tour was 91, 92. And on 92, going through Arkansas, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton hosted us in the governor's mansion.
Wow.
So he was a part sponsor, and he gave us all Arkansas travelorships signed by him. That's like keys to the state.
Wow.
Hereafter, wherever you go, you will be known as an Arkansas traveler. He's quite a comical guy. He said, and the one thing with that is you should never say anything negative about Arkansas.
Yeah. Of course, there's got to be a catch.
So until then, I've never said a single negative word about Arkansas.
And what does the key get you access to? Can you just go down there and enter buildings at will?
Yeah, I think you just walk up and hold that up. It's like going to the White House. It's like being a young intern in the White House during Bill Clinton's tenure. You just show you I'm one of Bill's concubines.
Oh.
Or John Kennedy. I'm here to help relieve John of his headaches. If he doesn't have sex 2 or 3 times a week with 2 women at a time, he gets terrible headaches. This is my pass.
Oh my.
Yeah, so I think we'll finish at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lama.
Your backyard looks very nice. Is that your backyard?
It is my backyard. It's I'll
It's
give
not
you
a virtual screen. You're sure you're not like sitting in some dungy like $300 a month apartment down in Skid Row, and you just put up a beautiful green screen.
No, look at my that's my Florida room paneled ceiling. I built that.
Wow, very nice.
Thank you. And then I build gardens for a living. This is not a good example. This is kind of like everything extra that's just been thrown into my patio. And this is a little sitting area. If you ever come to Detroit, I'd love to have you over here. And this is a nice little place to have a fire, and the cushions are all drying because of the water. But and then this is my wisteria. Beautiful. Yeah.
What part of Detroit are you in?
Royal Oak.
Okay.
Yeah, the suburbs.
Yeah, as you know, I go to Ann Arbor every year for the last 4 or 5 years and teach at Jewel Hart there. But these days, mostly teaching by Zoom. So I've taught a couple of weekends over the last weekends by Zoom to them. And I think January, I'm going to do a series of 6 teachings once a week on a Wednesday night through the Jewel Hart. So if you stay in touch with them, you can always link onto that and listen in if you're in the mood.
I absolutely will. And where in Canada are you?
The Gaspé. The Gaspé is a peninsula. The river below flows through Montreal and goes straight east and spreads into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which is really the Atlantic Ocean. And the south shore is a peninsula. So I was born on the tip of that peninsula. The French explorer Jacques Cartier landed there in 1534. So it's officially the first European town in Canada.
Wow.
Although it wasn't settled by white people at that time, because Cartier made the mistake of taking 2 of the local native princes back to show them Paris, and they both died of smallpox.
Oh,
So it
whoops.
made the whites a little shy to come back.
Yeah.
It's like babysitting for someone and the baby dies. The parents get home, oh,
Oh
sorry
my
about that.
God. Oh my God.
Yeah, she just was eating a marshmallow, and I was watching TV, and it was one of those whodunits, and just onto like who done it, and I did think I heard this little coughing and hacking, but I guess that marshmallow got stuck in her throat on the way down. And you didn't tell me don't give marshmallows to a 6-month-old baby.
Oh my God.
Anyway, they both died in Paris of some disease that they caught, because over here they had immunities to all different types of diseases, but different than the ones they had immunities to in Europe. So
Mm.
they died over there quite quickly. So the first city in Canada was Quebec City, and then Montreal, I think.
Lama, could I maybe try to coax one more story from you?
What kind of story?
So I know that you were very close with Kyabje Gaelic Rinpoche, and I remember him many times mentioning that his father was very well known throughout Tibet as a spirit exorcist, and that was a very strong part of his lineage and his tradition. Is there any story that comes to your mind about Gaelic and the topics that we've been discussing?
Oh, about the demo tuku. Well, all of the demos were very close to Dalai Lamas, so really from the beginning. And in fact, one of them was connected to Padmasambhava, so it's a very ancient lineage, you could say. And this demo, being a reincarnation of Gaelic Rinpoche's father.
Mm-hmm.
So Rinpoche never mentioned any of those stories to me when I was in India, and I was living in Dharamsala, and Rinpoche was living in Delhi. So, when I would see him, it would usually be at Dalai Lama teaching events or Trijang Rinpoche, Ling Rinpoche teaching events. And if I met him, it was usually talking about issues that were of interest to me.
Mm.
Because Rinpoche worked with Gene Smith, who was in charge of the American Library of Congress program in India, publishing rare Tibetan books. They agreed. Gene was able to talk the US government into giving him tens of thousands of dollars a year to send out whole teams of literary detectives trying to trace down rare Tibetan books in monasteries of the Himalayas and Bhutan and amongst the refugees in India, because back in Tibet, everything was destroyed. And then Gene relied very heavily on Gaelic Rinpoche for that. And so Rinpoche knew where every book that had been accessed was and who had it and that sort of stuff. So at that time, because I was working on early Dalai Lamas, their lives and works and stuff, and the Dharamsala, we only had the collected works of the 7th Dalai Lama, and the 13th, those two, no others. So then I was always, whenever I'd see Rinpoche, and Rinpoche really liked me a lot because of my interest in the literature. I mean, there may have been other reasons, the fact that I'm so wise and humorful and entertaining. But our kind of common ground was he had deep love for literature and preserving literature, and he really liked the fact that I was looking for I wasn't like being someone doing a PhD on a particular thesis and just doing an academic study of a particular topic, but was really interested in the kind of literary lives of the great of those Dalai Lama incarnations who were especially great. And so he was always so wonderfully helpful in that way. But of course, later I heard of stories he told about his dad, because back in Tibet, the demos traditionally were, they were connected with that side of Gelugpa, which brings in all of the old Nyingma and Sakya lineages
Mm.
associated with, we can call it environmental peace and harmony. In other words, placating the spirits,
Yeah.
communicating with the spirit world. You know, in Tibet, the Sakya treasons, traditionally all the witches in Tibet paid their taxes to the local Sakya monastery.
Wow.
So Demo Tuku sort of had that kind of connection, that same kind of connection from his early incarnations. And so for that reason, whenever there were any kind of spirit-based problems anywhere, he would be the go-to guy
Wow.
for advice on a solution. And not just Galek's father, but his previous incarnation, all the way back to Padmasambhava, and probably, you know, long before Padmasambhava, when Tibet was kind of pre-Songtsen Gompo Buddhist, you could say. We call it Bunpo, but it wasn't really Bunpo like non-Buddhist. You know, before Songtsen Gompo in 630 or so, when he made Buddhism the national religion, all he did was make his brand of Buddhism using his language and his dictionary and his sponsored translations on the national Buddhist platform.
Mm.
But long before that, many Tibetans, you know, Tibet's just a few hundred miles north of where Buddha was born. His biggest trading partner was always Kathmandu, which was Buddhist from 200 BC.
Mm.
So from all those many centuries and lifetimes, the Demo Tuku had that kind of special ambassadorship, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
The environmental harmonist.
Wow. And now
Peacemaker between humans and other species.
and now here he is in Ann Arbor teaching. How old is Demo right now? Is he in his 40s or is he in his 30s?
I don't know. He was 11 years old when I met him in Losaling in 1989. So,
Wow. 1989, 11 years old. Okay, so he's 2 years older. Yeah, 78.
uh-huh.
So he's 41.
Maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, a lot of Tibetans don't really know their birth dates that much.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
Unless, you know, if they're born in aristocratic families, they might. But otherwise, you know, most Tibetans just share. He could be a couple of years younger than that, because Tibetans are called one when they enter the womb.
Hmm.
And the first time when they come out, and if it's the year of the water horse, if 3 days later New Year comes, then on New Year Day, they're 2 years old.
Hmm.
So when we speak about it as age in terms of past tense, Tibetans always speak of it in terms of the year you've seen. Well, I've seen the water horse year,
Wow.
only for 3 days.
Yeah.
But now I'm seeing my second year.
Oh, very cool. I see. Yeah, yeah.
So sometimes if an Asian says I'm 83, they may only be 81.
Okay. Okay. So he might be 39.
Yeah, so I don't know, you know, but I don't remember if he was born in Tibet or in India or whatever. So, but anyway,
Well,
he was a very sweet kid at that age. And basically what happened is after my first Losaling tour in '89, when I went back to the monastery, one of the lamas asked me to photograph all the tulkus, because in Tibet, they sort of had solid sort of avenues of support.
mm-hmm.
Sort of people who over the centuries, those families had been disciples of that Lama, so that in this lifetime, they will naturally support him.
Yeah.
And so that was there, but in India, you know, Tibetans in India were all just refugees, and back in Tibet, they're under a communist China occupation. And so Lating Rinpoche who sort of came up with that idea once, said we should put some sort of program together, finding support for these young tulkus, because a young tulku isn't totally raised like an ordinary monk. You know, they sort of have special, they have to receive all the lineages of the old guy. So the ordinary monks just do the strict standard training, and whatever above that, they do whatever their personal teacher wants them to do. But a tulku generally is expected to master all the lineages of his predecessors and to receive those, whether or not they're thriving in that particular monastery.
Wow.
So it means he may have to invite lamas from Darjeeling or Nepal or America, if they're, you know, as refugees are scattered all over the world, right? And of course, if you invite them, you should host them nicely and feed them nicely and make a small offering and all this sort of thing. So I met him in that context. And we started that program, and we didn't find sponsors for everyone, but maybe half the young tulkus, the good-looking ones, we got sponsors for. And the young Dimo was very good-looking, but I think something already happened with him getting us support through some of Galec's students. And so then Lating, I think, may have, or, you know, the Tulku committee or whatever it was, decided he was well taken care of. What they really wanted to do was get some little fund for each of the, at that time, I think there were about 40 reincarnate lamas. And most, you know, 40 young reincarnate lamas. You know, the 80s saw kind of an explosion of young reincarnate lamas because Tibet opened up and lamas were allowed to go visit inside Tibet. And in 84, 85, and when they went back in, they'd go to often request the state oracle or one of the oracles, or go to the Dalai Lama, or go to Ling Rinpoche, Trijun Rinpoche, or one of the great lamas in our school and say, well, I'm going to Tibet and we still haven't found blah, blah, blah Lama, who's the greatest Lama from our area. And can you, like, is there any way you can, like, give some hints of how to look, and also setting up a kind of a committee, you could say. In other words, when I'm back, if I see some people who really seem very promising, can I send their names and, you know, ask the Dalai Lama, ask the state oracle, do some divinations, watch your dreams. Tulku, basically between about 83 and 88 was the, and 88 American moved in China and Tibet and Hong Kong. And it kind of backfired and led to a big crackdown. Of course, led to Tiananmen Square and the death of 5 million young students and and all of that in 89.
The death of how many?
But between 82, roughly 5 million.
Lama, you're breaking up. Our internet
Students.
our internet connection just got bad.
Was were given to.
Lama, if you can hear me, I've got less than 20% of hearing you or seeing you. Look at that. We start talking about Tiananmen Square and we lose the internet.
Yeah, yeah. China, they got about 20, 30 million people just hacking around the planet to try and improve China's image.
Were you saying that 5 million students died? Did I hear that number right?
Yeah, that's what the CIA estimated when I visited China a year later, and I was friends with some people in the CIA in Chengdu, and that was the number they estimated who'd been rounded up and disappeared. But obviously,
I lost you again, Glenn. If you can hear me, your screen's frozen and I have no audio.
yeah. Okay, bye-bye.